Our next speaker is Scott Thaden. He's going to talk about tank mixing, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. It's something that we do all the time and can get us in trouble. So, here you go.
Good afternoon. Is everybody still awake? Good. In our constant effort as an ag staff to get the best information to our growers, I've always been told that speaking in front of a big audience is like having a root canal. So because I care, I went this morning and I had a root canal. And now I'm speaking in front of you, and I'll let you know at the end which was worse. Where are we at here? Got it. So we're going to talk about guidelines for tank mixing, and there's a couple caveats that I want to give you before we start. This is a crop safety talk. Dr. Peters put some concoctions, and you'll see that they truly are concoctions, together to see how safe they are for the crops. This is not an endorsement of mixing or you can or can't. And we'll talk about that as we go along. This was strictly a crop safety aspect. First thing that you need to know about pesticides is that they need to be labeled for sugar beets if you're going to put them on sugar beets. That seems pretty elementary, and yet I think all of us get questions every year about, hey, can this work on beets? Sugar beet safety is based on whether the sugar beet can the plant can metabolize the chemicals being applied to it. And so the more complicated the herbicides or the concoctions, if you will, get, the harder it is for the plant to metabolize those. Cool temperatures, excessive moisture, no sun, so the slowing down of the growing of the plant, those all affect how it metabolizes in the plant and how well they can do. So again, even if we've used some mixtures time and again, if the conditions aren't very good, that plant might not metabolize it, and you could get some injury to the plant. We all know why we mix. We want to cut down on the number of passes that we make across the field. We want to increase the efficacy. We talked about that this morning with our CLS program, that mixtures very often synergize and can be good for each other. The first thing that, before we start any mixing, the first thing you got to do is to check and see if they're physically compatible. One of the things that we're going to talk about quite soon is Quadris. Quadris doesn't mix with anything. It does not. The bottom right is Quadris with Roundup. If any of you have ever tried to tank mix Quadris, you will figure out what Jello truly is. The other thing that you need to know when we're talking about this is that we haven't done these out in the field. We've done them in greenhouses, and we've done them with in quite controlled conditions. So again, in our controls, the plants may metabolize them differently than they would out in the field. So for the experiment in the greenhouse, we used the same types of ingredients, the same types of sugar beet seed. All the treatments were treated the same. And necrosis, malformation, and growth reduction were evaluated at 3, 7, and 14 days after treatment. And then they were also given a percentage. So the first question we wanted to answer was, can I tank mix an insecticide, or both an insecticide and stinger, with my Roundup Power Max ethofumicate and Outlook Pass? You can see that EC formulations, Metallochlor and Outlook, speckle the sugar beet. I think we've all seen that. And a little bit of speckling is probably okay. It seems that Asana, the insecticide that we're probably using most, well, we are using most by the survey, seems to be synergizing those chemicals to get a little bit more damage or speckling on the plant. That's probably superficial, and it's from the surfactant system of the chemicals, just spreading that out on the plant. Here's the actual data. In this data, we used Lorsban because we still could. So we wanted to look at that, and you can see just in general that the more chemicals you put together, depending on their formulation, but in general, the more you put together, the more injury you had and the growth reduction. Also keep in mind that if we're using Asana or Mustang Max, they're probably safer than what Lorsban was. Again, different formulations are creating different conditions. Those chemicals or those insecticides were actually acting like an adjuvant. And so we may want to adjust our adjuvant depending on which chemical we want to use. Or what chemicals we want to combine. Talk to your agriculturalist. If we don't know, we can surely find out pretty quickly. Here's the photos of that table that we just saw. You can see that the base plus Outlook plus Mustang Max plus Stinger looks pretty tough. So always remember, when we're talking about adjuvants and Roundup, we are not talking about ammonium sulfate. Ammonium sulfate is not an adjuvant. Please, please. Ammonium sulfate is a water conditioner that you need to use with any mix that has a glyphosate product in it. So the next question that we get sometimes is, I got a little bit of beta mix left. Can I add it to my mixture of Roundup, Etho, Stinger, and Dual in my lay-by pass? Again, looking at from a crop safety area, you can see that in general, the more that you mix, the more injury you get. Stinger is also an activator. We don't think that Beta mix or Lorsban are really the culprits in this mix. The injury that you can get from Beta mix, which we all know if it's too hot or too sunny, we can get quite a bit of burn, seems to be exacerbated by the activators such as Stinger. What we really want to make sure is that our sugar beets are growing actively at the time. So that's why our recommendation, for instance, for Beta mix is not to spray in the dead of the in the dead of the afternoon when the plants have pretty much shut down and are not actively growing because it's too hot or too humid and they can't respire, etc. So what if we use ethofumicate pre and then we come up with a concoction? Does that have any effect on crop injury if we've used ethofumicate pre? So again, it follows in general that the more things you throw in the tank, the more damage you will your beets will occur on your beets. It does not look like though ethofumicate pre has anything to do with any extra damage that could occur. So for herbicides, if we're mixing herbicides, just make sure that if you're on your laybys, the chloracetamides, so the Warrant, the Outlook, they can injure the beet if there's a heavy rain and they get activated very well. Haha, when has that ever happened? Stinger can be an activator, and it can make injury more prone, but usually that injury is short-lived and we're not seeing that inhibit the growth for very long. There can be sugar beet injury with Beta mix or an insecticide is mixed in, and again, the more complicated the mixture, the more likely you're going to have injury. Here again, we'll have some photos. You can see it's hard to see, but in the top one, there's much more. As you move to the right in both pictures, you can see that the injury gets more and more significant as the concoctions get more and more complicated. Everybody turn your head on this one because we couldn't fit it in on the slide. But Quadris can be mixed with Roundup, Power Max, and or Stinger. Yeah, it can, but good luck. When Quadris doesn't mix with anything, I think if you called any agriculturalist and asked if I can mix Quadris with anything, it's going to be a resounding no. But if it is mixed, it does tend to show some injury to sugar beet. Excalia is another newer fungicide. So we wanted to see what happened if we used Excalia. This one Tom, is this the right slide? Excalia is a different formulation of a similar product, and you can see that when it's mixed with some others, it doesn't have as much damage to the plant as Quadris. And here's the photos of that in the greenhouse. Here's Mustang Max mixed with Excalia or Quadris, and you can see the differences there. It's not a whole lot, but there is differences. So as far as soil-borne fungicides are concerned, tank mix Quadris with water-based formulations, Excalia with oil-based formulations. Again, follow your best practices. Do a jar test, see if they'll mix, and then proceed from there. What about other mixes? Other mixes haven't been looked at nearly as much, and we're always looking at mixes to see how they perform, but we haven't looked at too many others. Tin fungicide can be damaging no matter what it's mixed with. With Roundup, it can heat up the Roundup, or excuse me, that's the wrong word. It can cause bigger injury when mixed with Roundup. As the temperature gets and humidity gets higher, that injury tends to get worse as well. So what's the whole thing? Remember, this was about sugar beet injury, not whether you can or should mix chemicals together. If you're thinking about mixing or saving a pass, talk to your agriculturalist. We can let you know what other guys have done, what haven't they done, what could work and what might not work. And also keep in mind that when you're going out to spray, environmental conditions matter. And we talk about that in just about every time we talk about spraying. Wind, too much dew, too much heat of the day can all affect what our insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides can do. We got any questions? Yes, sir.
Recently, the EPA reversed its decision of chlorpyrifos. Are we going to be able to use chlorpyrifos?
The what?
I was just going to talk about that, so perfect timing. So here's the situation with chlorpyrifos or Lorsban. Everybody knows it was they revoked all the tolerances a couple years ago. We couldn't use it on anything. There's been a process. There's been 2 steps that have had to take place at the federal level in order to allow us to use chlorpyrifos. The last one was a mandate that had to be issued by the courts. That has happened. So from a federal standpoint, you can use chlorpyrifos. Unfortunately, you also have to have permission from the state. And in the state of Minnesota, we do not currently have permission, or they have not re-registered, is technically what it is, chlorpyrifos products in the state of Minnesota. What's going to happen? So the clock starts ticking once the registrant applies for re-registration. In this case, the company's name is Garda. It's my understanding they have applied. Mike, do you know? Yep. They applied to the state of Minnesota for re-registration. The rules say the state has to say something within at least 60 days. Doesn't mean they have to say yes, but they do have to say something. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now to find out whether we'll be able to use it or not. Fingers crossed. We're hopeful. There's lots of pressure being put on the Department of Ag, not only by the sugar beet industry, but the soybean people. I know it's corn. Lots of people have Commissioner Peterson's cell phone on speed dial at this point, I'm sure. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that it's available. But as of today, you cannot use chlorpyrifos on any crops in the state of Minnesota. That was a long-winded answer to a really good question. Sorry. Any other questions for Scott or me? Okay, thank you.